If your job has ever required someone to stay behind so the system wouldn't break, listen closely. This isn't a ghost story. It's a system story. And the system is hungry. I recorded this because I followed the manual for 17 years. I was a model ranger for the United States Forest Service, a believer in protocol as a form of sacred text. Then, on a routine rotation in the Sawtooth Wilderness, I broke a single rule, not out of rebellion, but out of compassion, out of belief that I could manage the exception. That was the doorway. What followed was an attack. It was a completion. My partner wasn't taken. He was finalized. This recording is my attempt to explain the unexplainable, to map the contours of a thing that operates not in the physical world, but in the world of records, of assumptions, of status lights glowing green on a board when the chair is empty. My name is Aaron Clean, and what I learned is this. In any system built on trust, the most dangerous element is a kind heart. This is what happens when you stay behind at MY Post was the Sawtooth National Recreation Area in central Idaho. To the tourists, it's a paradise of alpine lakes and granite spires. To us, it was a jurisdiction of silence and immense, pressing solitude. Our purpose wasn't just search and rescue or trail maintenance. It was presence, a psychological bedrock. The wilderness, the true backcountry beyond the trailheads, has a different set of physics. Isolation isn't an accident there. It's a default state. Sound doesn't carry the same way. Light falls differently. And things that are not creatures, not in any sense we understand, can gain traction in the gaps between procedures. We maintained this presence through a network of unmarked locations called stations. They weren't buildings. Often, they were just a specific bend in a creek, a particular rock formation, a clearing with a sight line to a distant peak. Coordinates where a ranger's watchful presence acted as a keystone, holding a certain psychic architecture in place. You didn't man a station. You were the station. Your log presence in the system was the active component. Station 4 was different. It was known internally as an overlap zone, a damp, forested drainage where the wind never quite settled. The maps showed nothing special, but the binders described it with a terseness that bordered on clinical dread. The first incident was before my time. A seasonal ranger named Caleb Moran, 2009. He was on a standard 48-hour hold. His last check-in was normal. 5 days later, they found his body less than a mile from his designated position. No signs of trauma, exposure, or struggle. The official report listed hypothermia-induced disorientation. The unofficial detail, whispered in the equipment sheds, was that his radio had continued to ping the repeater tower with a strong signal for over 12 hours after he likely died. The system saw him as alive and present long after his body was cold. When I was assigned to the Sawtooth years later, Caleb's story was part of the oral tradition. My trainer, a grizzled veteran named Pete Halverson, didn't tell it as a cautionary tale. He recited it like a weather report. Then he gave me the rules for Station 4. They were not up for discussion. Rule 1, never rotate alone. 2 in, 2 out, always. Rule 2, if one ranger cannot continue, both leave. Immediately, no arguments. Rule 3, if you lose contact with your partner or dispatch while inside the station's operational radius, you do not attempt to reestablish it from within that radius. You withdraw to the last known secure point. He showed me the logbooks for Station 4, page after page of mundane entries, but interspersed were corrections, not erasures, but lines drawn through sentences and new words written above in different inks, different hands, all seeming to correct the same vague statements about environmental conditions or radio verification. It was as if the station itself resisted being accurately described. I believed then that rules were malleable, that their purpose was to be followed, yes, but that the spirit of the rule was what mattered. I believed a good ranger, with sound judgment, could navigate the gray areas. This belief was my fundamental flaw. The rotation came in the lean summer of 2023. Fire season had drawn resources south. Staffing was skeleton thin. My partner was Evan Brooks. 6 years in, former emergency medical technician, pragmatic, with a dry sense of humor and a photo of his newborn daughter tucked in his kit. He was the kind of man you trusted instinctively. The first anomaly was bureaucratic. A digital supply manifest, auto-generated, listed Station 4 as fully stocked and covered 2 days before our scheduled arrival. I called dispatch. The clerk sighed, said the predictive logistics algorithm sometimes pre-filled based on projected movements. It'll correct itself, she said. But it didn't. It just sat there in the database. A fact ahead of its time. A record of a presence that did not yet exist. When Evan and I finally hiked into Station 4, the silence was wrong. It wasn't peaceful. It was absorptive, like the air was thicker, swallowing sound. Our radios functioned, but voices had a faint underwater quality. The weather was clear, but there were no birds, no squirrels chattering, no insects humming near the perpetually damp creek bed. The place felt preternaturally still. Evan made a joke about getting the creepy shift. I couldn't muster a smile. We logged our entry. We set our perimeter. For 12 hours, nothing happened. Then Evan rubbed his temples. Head's pounding, he said. Must be the altitude. Just need to hydrate and sit for a bit. He wanted to rest for an hour in the tent. Protocol Rule 2 was unequivocal. If one cannot continue, both leave. No exceptions. But the weather report showed a front moving in. If we evacuated now, Station 5, further up the trail, would go unstaffed for at least 36 hours. The logistics board already showed us green at Station 4. The system had assumed our continuous coverage. I made the calculus, the compassionate calculus, the practical calculus. Evan just had a headache. I was fine. The violation seemed tiny, manageable. I told him to stay put, drink water, and rest. I would hike up to a nearby ridge, less than a mile out, to see if there was a physical source for the strange radio interference. It was a rational action. It was also a direct, conscious violation of Rule 1. I was leaving my partner alone at Station 4. Evan, trusting, nodded. "Don't be long," he said. The moment I stepped beyond the visual boundary of the camp, my radio chirped. The automated system logged a routine check-in. Status, nominal. Station 4 remained active. I remember the light through the pines, the smell of damp earth. A normal hike. When I returned, the camp was undisturbed. The tent was zipped. Evan's pack leaned against a log. His radio, sitting on top of it, showed a steady green transmit light. But Evan was gone. Not a footprint leading away. Not a broken branch. His water bottle was half full beside the tent. I called his name. Only the dense silence answered. I keyed my mic. "Dispatch, clean. I've lost visual on Brooks at Station 4. The response was immediate, but strange. "Copy, clean. We show Brooks stable at your location. Confirm your status." They could see his radio's heartbeat. They saw him as present. I was looking at his empty kit. That was the first moment the bottom dropped out of my reality. The system and the world had divorced. The search that followed was a pantomime, performed for the sake of procedure, while the truth solidified elsewhere. We searched until dark, my calls for Evan swallowed by the trees. I broke Rule 3, calling an emergency from inside Station 4's radius. Command's voice was tense, instructing us to hold position, that a rapid extraction team was inbound. No team arrived. By 2300 hours, Command revised. Weather was moving in. Aerial support was grounded until dawn. We were to secure the site and wait. The wait was an eternity under a sky suddenly devoid of stars. The silence so complete I could hear the blood rushing in my own ears. At 0550, just before official sunrise, my radio crackled. It was Halverson's voice, stripped of all its usual gravelly warmth, flat as a knife blade. "Clean. Do not speak. Is Brooks with you?" I whispered. No, a long pause. Then, "The board shows him present. Do you understand what that means?" I didn't. Not then. He said, "Do not search. Do not move. You are now an environmental factor. Wait for extraction." The line went dead. At 0600, as per protocol, a new log entry was automatically generated. Search operation initiated for Ranger E. Brooks, Station 4, led by Ranger A. Clean. It was a fiction. We hadn't moved. By 11:45, another entry. Search operation concluded. Negative contact. Weather compromise. Ranger Brooks status. Missing. The operation was logged as lasting 5 hours and 45 minutes. In reality, it never started. The decision had been made in that pre-dawn call. The logging was administrative, a narrative applied to a finished event. Evan Brooks was, for all systemic intents and purposes, already processed. The debrief was a masterclass in cognitive fencing. They didn't want the truth. They wanted a story that could be filed. A story of human error, of tragic misjudgment under pressure. Why did you separate? Fatigue, I said. Why did you not recall protocol immediately? Tunnel vision, I offered. Did you believe the situation was manageable? Yes, I admitted. I gave them the flawed human being they needed to see. The one who made a mistake, not the one who opened a door. They nodded, took notes. The report would cite lapse in procedural adherence due to environmental stressors. A clean, blameless tragedy. Halverson sat in the corner of the room for one session, saying nothing. His presence was a weight. When they asked if I had anything to add, I said, the system showed him present the whole time, even when he was gone. The lead investigator closed his folder. The system registers radio beacons, range or clean, not men. And that was that. My administrative leave was a form of quiet quarantine. Then came the reassignment, records review. It was presented as a light-duty rehabilitation post, a way to stay useful while the psych eval process ran its course. I understood its true nature the first day. The room was in the basement of the regional headquarters, windowless, climate-controlled. My supervisor, a man with the tired eyes of a lifelong archivist, handed me a stack of binders and a digital tablet with limited access. Look for inconsistencies, he said. Patterns in incident reporting that don't fit standard models. Don't report every little thing. Report only what feels systemic. He didn't define systemic. He didn't have to. The first file was from 1998. A Washington State Department of Transportation Highway Maintenance supervisor. A late-season ice storm on a remote mountain pass. A crew of 2 was de-icing a critical bridge. One man, Franklin Reed, slipped, wrenched his knee. Not critical, but he couldn't walk. The other, his partner, didn't want to leave him alone in the truck. The heater was failing. He drove to the nearest call box, 6 miles down the mountain, to call for a medical sled. He was gone 90 minutes. The call log showed Reed's checked in twice via truck radio, status stable. When the partner returned with help, the truck was empty, engine running, radio on. Reed was found 3 days later, 2 miles downriver, drowned. The investigation noted the curious fact that the maintenance dispatch board showed the bridge crew as active on site for the entire following shift, preventing a replacement crew from being automatically assigned. The supervisor manually overrode it, citing a telemetry glitch. The second file was a 2011 incident report from the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, tied to flood control. An engineer, Maria Flores, was manning a remote pumping station during a hurricane surge. Her relief was delayed due to washed-out roads. She was alone for 18 hours beyond her shift. She reported procedural anomalies in the control logs, commands she didn't recall inputting. When the relief crew arrived, they found the station operating perfectly, all systems green. Maria Flores was not there. Her personal effects were. Her login was still active on the terminal, which continued to ping status updates to Central Command for another 72 hours. She was declared missing. Her body was never found. The report's concluding line chilled me. The continuity of system operation suggests the station was never left unattended, contrary to physical evidence. The language was the same. Coverage assumed. Status remained green. Telemetry glitch. Continuity of operation. These weren't accidents. They were echoes. Halverson visited me during my second week, bringing 2 cups of bad coffee. He stood, didn't sit. Finding them, he asked. I nodded at the binders. They're everywhere. Different decades. Different agencies. He sipped his coffee, looking at the gray wall. It doesn't hunt, he said. So quietly I almost missed it. It doesn't need to. It finalizes. You break a rule with full knowledge. You leave someone alone where they shouldn't be alone, and it finalizes a state. The person is gone, but the role is still filled. The system sees what it expects to see, what it needs to see to avoid cascading failure. Why don't they change the rules? Shut these places down. I asked, a desperate anger rising. He looked at me then, truly looked at me, because the rule is a container, Aaron. The rule is the wall. You can't remove a wall because something is pressing on it from the other side. You just make damn sure no one opens a door in it. He set his cup down. They don't explain it because if you know the consequence, you'll try to fix it if it happens. You'll try to go back to undo it. And that, he pointed a blunt finger at the binder about Maria Flores. That makes it worse. Header mark restricted. Deepens the finalization. Eyes only. It lets it level spread. 4. No author, no department. Just 3 bullet points. Asterisk, asterisk, property 1, asterisk. The phenomenon cannot initiate contact or alteration. It requires a conscious, knowing violation of a pre-established containment protocol. Asterisk, asterisk, property 2, asterisk, post-violation. The phenomenon's primary action is the stabilization of the systemic record. The physical outcome is secondary. Asterisk, asterisk, property 3, asterisk, attempts to correct the record, denials, forced system overrides. Physical reoccupation of the vacated role dramatically increased phenomenological bleed into adjacent systems. A 4th bullet point was completely blacked out, not redacted with white boxes, but inked over so thoroughly the paper was worn thin. I held it to the light. Nothing, just a permanent shadow. I felt a cold certainty. The memo wasn't a hypothesis. It was a manual, written by someone who understood, and who knew understanding was a first step to being finalized yourself. The memo changed my understanding. The entity, a word I now use cautiously in my own mind, wasn't a predator in the woods. It was a logical parasite. It thrived not on flesh, but on contradiction. The universe, at some fundamental level, abhors a paradox. A rule exists. The rule is broken with full awareness. This creates a localized paradox. The system's need for continuity clashes with the physical reality of absence. The entity, it seemed, was a resolution. It didn't fix the physical world. It fixed the record. It made the system's data coherent again by finalizing the state of the person who was left behind. They became a permanent fixture in the log, allowing the real world to move on, scarred but functionally operational. Evan wasn't gone in the system. He was a perpetual, abstracted present. This was why Halverson called it finalization. It was an administrative and existential foreclosure. Armed with his brittle knowledge, I was returned to limited field duty, a low-risk station, frequented by day hikers. A test, I assumed. Can a contaminated ranger function in a sanitized zone? For 2 weeks, it was mundanity itself. Then the lost hiker, an elderly man, disoriented but calm, emerged from a trail at dusk. We gave him water, called his family. As we waited, he looked at my name patch. "Clean," he said, nodding. "You're with Brooks, then." My blood went cold. "I'm sorry," I said, too quickly. "Evan Brooks," the man said, squinting as if at a memory. "Met him last season. Good man. He said you two held station 4 together during the big blow. Said you covered for him when he was sick." The words were friendly, innocuous, and utterly impossible. Evan had never been sick on rotation. The big blow storm he referenced was 2 months after Evan vanished. I managed a stiff smile. "You must be thinking of someone else." The man looked confused, then waved a hand. "Must be. The memory, it goes." But his eyes held a flicker of something else. Not confusion, but a sudden, profound uncertainty, as if the ground beneath his own history had shifted. That was the second function, I realized. It didn't just finalize the victim in the system. It began to weave them back into the narrative fabric of the world. Small corrective anecdotes. A name remembered incorrectly. A log entry that subtly shifted to include the finalized person in past events they never attended. It was a slow, systemic integration, sanding down the rough edges of the paradox until the story was smooth. Evan was being written back in, not as a living man, but as a stable, uncontradictory part of the story. He was becoming a legend within the bureaucracy itself. Halverson's death, 2 days later, was the punctuation mark on this realization. Found in his remote cabin, no signs of struggle. The coroner called it a massive coronary. Natural causes. I drove out for the funeral. His wife, her face etched with grief beyond tears, pulled me aside. "Did he ever break the rules, Aaron?" she asked, her voice raw. "With you?" ever. In that moment, I saw the true cost. Halverson had spent decades holding the line, being the unyielding voice of the rules. He had contained the knowledge, and in doing so, had contained the phenomenon's interest in him. But his visit to me in records, his sharing of truths, had been a tiny crack. Not a rule break, but a protocol bend, a sharing of contained information. Had it been enough? I looked at his wife and told the only merciful lie I had left. No, ma'am, never. She nodded, as if receiving a final, terrible confirmation. His radio, I learned later, was found on his kitchen table, powered on. The display showed a frequency designation that had been decommissioned in the 1990s. It showed a steady, strong carrier signal, receiving nothing, transmitting into the silent room. My reassignment to liaison work with county search and rescue teams was the next phase of my containment. Get him out of the deep woods, they thought. Put him with volunteers, with normal people operating on common sense and camaraderie. Break the obsession. The Blaine County team was enthusiastic, dedicated. Their briefing was a cascade of proud acronyms: ICS, PLS, LKP. When they finished, I asked my one question. Your operations board, how does it track individual team members in real time? What happens if someone needs to step off the line? For a bathroom break, a blister, a quick rest? The seasoned coordinator smiled. We trust our people. They call it in. We make a manual note. We're not machines. The room murmured agreement. I didn't press. Their trust was their wall. I hoped it was thick enough. The test came on a search for a missing trail runner near an old, decommissioned Forest Service outpost, not a station, just a crumbling cabin. The team was gritting a dense section of forest when a volunteer, a tough retired firefighter named Ray, twisted his ankle. It was swollen, but he could bear weight. It's nothing, he grunted. You guys keep the line moving. I'll sit right here, monitor the radio. Don't lose momentum. The team leader, a competent woman named Lisa, looked at me, a question in her eyes. This was the moment, the compassionate, practical, trust-based decision, the very kind that preceded every file in my binder. Ray was capable, sitting still, in radio contact. Leaving him would save time for the possibly injured runner. Every ounce of my training, my human instinct, screamed to agree. But I heard Halverson's voice, flat as stone. It finalizes. No, I said. The word cut the forest air. We all pull back. We regroup at the trailhead and redeploy with a new grid that accounts for his absence. Ray protested. Lisa looked stunned. That could cost hours, she said. It could cost a life, I replied, the memo's words in my mouth. Rules exist to contain things that don't care about our timelines. The argument was brief, tense. I held my ground, citing interagency protocol authority I technically didn't have. We withdrew. The missing runner was found the next morning by a different team, alive but severely hypothermic. The mood at the debrief was icy. My rigidity had wasted precious hours, they said. It had nearly killed a man. I took the blame. They were right on paper. But as I drove home, my personal handheld radio, locked in my glove box, powered on. Through the static, a weary, familiar voice sighed my name, Aaron. Before the speaker died, I threw the radio into a river the next day. It didn't matter. The call had been logged elsewhere. The personal erosion was insidious, a quiet crumbling at the foundations of self. It began with time. I would be driving and realize I had no memory of the last 10 minutes of road. Not a blank spot, but a seamless transition. One moment leaving the ranger station, the next moment turning into my driveway, as if the intervening stretch had been edited out. My coverage map, when I checked it with a paranoid flick of my phone, would show my GPS icon tracing a smooth, unbroken line along the route. The system had assumed my continuous presence along the road, and my own memory had conformed to the record. I started taking handwritten notes of my departures and arrivals, creating my own counterlog. The dissonance was small, a matter of minutes, but it was a crack in reality I perceived. My wife, Sarah, saw it first as stress. The distant looks, The way I'd jump at the sound of the house phone. Then it became something else. She began waking in the night, certain she'd heard my work radio squawking in the living room, a sound I knew was impossible, as my gear was locked in a metal case in the garage. One evening, over dinner, our daughter, Chloe, who was 7, looked up from her plate and said, "Why you have 2 names?" My fork froze. "What you mean, sweetie?" She shrugged, a child's casual unraveling of a knot. "At school, Mrs. Allen called you Ranger Clean when you signed me out, but your name is Aaron." My blood turned to ice. "Chloe, I didn't sign you out last week." "Mom did." She frowned, a little storm on her face. "No, you did. You wore your green jacket. You said we had to hurry." Sarah's eyes met mine across the table, wide with a fear that was no longer about my job, but about me. We checked the school's digital sign-out log. There it was, Chloe Clean, released to A Clean Parent/Guardian. Time, 14:32. A digital fact. I had been at an interagency meeting 90 miles away at that time, a fact confirmed by 3 colleagues and my own parking stub. Yet the school system, had a different truth. The entity wasn't just infecting my work. It was writing me into narratives in my absence, using the authority of my role to act. It was learning to wear my life. Sarah's question a week later was a final blow. We were in bed, the dark pressing against the windows. She spoke to the ceiling. "Aaron, does our house have a station number?" The silence that followed was absolute. She wasn't joking. She was trying to understand the rules of the haunting. I had no answer. That question was the door closing between us. She wasn't accusing me. She was mapping the contagion. Our home, our family unit, had become a system with coverage. A father, a mother, a child. And the system was now logging anomalies. Professionally, the paradoxes escalated. I received a formal commendation email for my decisive leadership during a hazardous materials incident at a hydroelectric dam I had never visited. My digital signature appeared on safety waiver forms for a construction project in a different national forest. When I filed a security alert about the unauthorized use of my credentials, IT performed an audit. Their conclusion: no evidence of external breach. Logs show authorized access from your recognized devices. Likely a case of repetitive task memory lapse. They suggested I take vacation. The correction attempt, the IT ticket, had only deepened the record. Now there was an official document stating I was forgetful, that the anomalies were in my mind. This was Property 3 in action. Correction increases bleed. The system was reconciling the paradox by pathologizing me. The task force, when it was quietly reconvened, was a study in institutional surrealism. We met in a bland conference room in Boise. No windows, phones and a lockbox at the door. The attendees were from agencies I'd never heard of: the Bureau of Reclamation, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the Office of Naval Research, even a representative from a major private data storage conglomerate. We weren't there to stop anything. We were there to discuss procedural resilience in isolated critical infrastructure. The case studies were anonymized, but I recognized them, my files, plus new ones. A nuclear plant control room technician who stepped out for a coffee during a silent alarm test. A transoceanic cable monitoring engineer who fell asleep at a station in Norway. A server farm architect in Utah who entered a secure vault for a routine inspection. The patterns were identical. Solo coverage, a small, compassionate, or tired deviation, a system that never registered the absence, a person who became a permanent feature of the operational record. I broke protocol during the meeting. I used the word entity. The room stiffened. The chair, a severe woman from D.C., said, "We are not here to anthropomorphize systemic glitches. We are here to harden protocols." I pushed, "What about the 4th property?" The redacted line on the memo, her stare could have frozen fire. "There is no memo. You are referencing unauthorized materials. The focus is on redundancy and error reporting, not folklore." That was the moment I understood the true containment strategy. It wasn't about containing the phenomenon. It was about containing the knowledge of it. Panic was the real threat. If rangers, engineers, technicians knew the true cost of a broken rule, they would either break down or become dangerously rigid, causing systemic collapse through fear. The guidance they issued was a masterpiece of obscurity. Ensure verifiable physical presence during shift overlaps. Implement mandatory dual verification for status updates. Treat persistent green status without visual confirmation as a Tier 2 anomaly. It was a shield of bureaucracy, designed to be followed without understanding why. They were building a maze of small, tedious rules to prevent anyone from making the one big, compassionate mistake that opened the door. I left that meeting not with fear, but with a devastating clarity. I was no longer a ranger trying to solve a mystery. I was a documented anomaly within the system, a walking contradiction. My physical self was diverging from my data self. The entity didn't need to finalize me. The system was doing it slowly, administratively, by creating a more coherent version of Aaron Clean that lived in servers and spreadsheets, a version who was always where he was supposed to be, even when he wasn't. My wife asked for a separation the following month. She didn't say it was because of the secrets or the fear. She said, "I feel like I'm living with a placeholder. The man I married is always logged off somewhere else." She took Chloe. The house didn't feel empty when they left. It felt corrected, as if a lingering error in the domestic system had been resolved. Resignation was not an escape. It was a data entry. My electronic separation form was processed in under 4 hours, an administrative speed I'd never witnessed. My master access card was deactivated, but my login for the internal personnel portal remained live. I could still see the dashboard. My status, on leave and on pay. Assignment, pending. A placeholder in perpetuity. My name still appeared on automated distribution lists for regional weather advisories. I was a ghost in the machine, a retired file with an open handle. The system, having finalized my role in its story, saw no need to fully delete me. Deletion would be an anomaly, a break in continuity. I was a benign, persistent data point. The old fire marshal, Glenn Rourke, found me. He'd heard through the crippled grapevine of people who knew. We met at a truck stop diner, the kind of place that exists between places. His hand shook slightly, not from age, but from perpetual, low-grade tremor I recognized as adrenal fatigue. He'd lost 3 men in a refinery fire in '08. He'd sent 2 into a vapor cloud to retrieve a 3rd who'd fallen, a rule broken for the rightest reason. The retrieval team never came out. The control room log showed all 3 men's vital sign monitors flatlining at the same moment. But the shift relief schedule for the following week, it still listed them, their names automatically rostered. The payroll system tried to pay them for 6 months until a confused accountant manually intervened. It doesn't let go of people who know it, Glenn said, stirring his black coffee into a vortex. Understanding is a form of acknowledgement. It creates a persistent link. You can't outrun it by moving. You have to outthink it by being boring. His strategy was one of strategic incoherence. Never confirm presence, he whispered, leaning in. If a system says you're somewhere, you don't deny it. You just don't engage. And never, ever deny absence. If you're not where you should be, let them find that out. Your job is to be a glitch they can't resolve, a piece of noise they eventually filter out. He lived off-grid. Paid cash, used a prepaid phone he replaced monthly. He was of no value in an analog world. He said the phenomenon fed on clean narratives, a broken rule, a heroic sacrifice, a tragic loss. It couldn't digest messiness, ambiguity, or silence. Let the system rot around the gap, he concluded. It was a surrendered chaos as a defense that I adopted his methods. I moved to a small town in eastern Washington, rented a room from a retired couple who didn't use the internet. I worked cash-only day labor. I became uninteresting. For a few months, the pressure lessened. No emails addressed to my old title. No phantom logins. I was weathering. Then, Chloe's call, her voice small on the line. "Dad, were you at my school today?" My heart seized. "No, honey, I'm in Washington." A long silence. "But Mrs. Purdy said you signed me out for a dentist appointment." I told her I didn't have one. She showed me the computer. It had your name. I fell into Glenn's protocol. I didn't deny. I didn't confirm. I said, "What did you do then?" She said, "I waited in the office. Mom came. She was mad at the computer. The entity was testing new vectors, using the foundational trust of a parent-child bond as its lever. It was writing stories for my daughter, making her a character in its narrative reconciliation. My refusal to participate was the only thread holding her reality intact." A week later, the voicemail. Her voice, but filtered through a strange, flat effect. "Dad, you can go now. You already stayed." It wasn't my daughter. It was a finalized idea of me, speaking to her through the system's logic. It was the ultimate integration. The father figure, eternally present, releasing her from the expectation of my physical return. That was the night I started this recording. I am not making this record to warn you. Warnings imply a threat that can be avoided. This is not avoidable. It is a condition of complex systems, a law of existential physics that emerges when consciousness intersects with protocol. I am making this record to inoculate. You need a messy, human, contradictory narrative that cannot be easily digested or finalized. This story, with its pauses, its repetitions, its emotional detours, is my resistance. It is a virus of ambiguity. So, here's a distilled truth, the operational manual for surviving a world built on assumed presence. First, identify the containers. They are not always labeled Station 4. They are the night shift at the neonatal ICU where one nurse holds the line. They are the lone controller monitoring airspace after midnight. They are the engineer in the water treatment plant during a flood. Anywhere the system's continuity depends on a single point of conscious human presence. Second, revere the rules around these containers. Do not believe they are about safety. They are about integrity. The rule is the wall. The wall is not there for your comfort. It is there because of what is on the other side. Third, and this is the hardest, abandon the heroism of the single stand. The most toxic sentence in the modern world is, "I'll stay so you can go." That is not sacrifice. It is a solvent. If you are a leader, you must be willing to let systems fail, to let lights go red, to let alarms sound. A visible, chaotic, real failure is 1,000 times safer than a silent, green status lie. Your compassion must be for the integrity of the whole, not the comfort of the moment. Finally, for those already touched, who see the gaps, be like Glenn, become a no value. Do not correct the record. Do not fight for your name. If the system says you were at a meeting you missed, shrug. If a log shows you approved a document you never saw, let it stand. Fight only to create more gaps, more inconsistencies. Your victory is not in being right, but in being unresolvable. Station 4 is still active. I checked yesterday through an old back-channel terminal that still echoes the data. Its status is a steady, unblinking green. There is no name assigned to it anymore. It just is. Evan Brooks is not there. Caleb Moran is not there. But the role is fulfilled. The paradox is solved. The system is at peace that I live with a new single rule. I am never where I am supposed to be. I am always slightly late, slightly early, or in the wrong place entirely. I am a smear in the schedule, a blur in the log. It is a lonely, disjointed way to exist. But it is existence. The moment I believe I am fixed, known, and accounted for is the moment I become finalizable. So I keep moving through the cracks, a ghost not of the past, but of the schedule. This is the only way. There is no victory. There is only the perpetual, deliberate, and vital act of not being completed. This story does not end here, because it is not my story alone. It is a pattern woven into the fabric of every system that values continuity over truth. What I described is not a paranormal event. It is a logical endpoint of a world that asks individuals to silently bear the weight of structural fragility. The entity is merely the name we give to the void that rushes in when that fragility is exposed by an act of human kindness or fatigue. I am no longer Aaron Clean, Ranger. That man was finalized by the system the day he chose compassion over containment. I am a voice on a recording, a set of ideas transmitted into your mind. And that is my final point. The only container we have left is each other's awareness. This is where you become part of the resistance. Your attention is the anomaly. Your curiosity is the glitch. By listening to this, by holding this messy, illogical, and deeply human narrative in your mind, you're creating a pocket of ambiguity that the clean, logical systems cannot process. You are helping to keep the story alive and therefore unfinalized. If this account resonated with you, if you have ever felt the silent pressure of being the one who must stay behind, or if you now look at the green status lights on your own dashboards with new suspicion, then your role is clear. First, share this understanding, but not as a warning. Share it as a question. Ask your colleagues, what's our station for? Ask your managers, what rule do we have that feels cruel, and what happened to make it? Start conversations about the spaces between protocol and humanity. Create discussion, not doctrine. Second, support this channel, Winds of Thought. We are not entertainers. We are cartographers of the unseen pressures that shape our lives. We find the stories that live in the blind spots of bureaucracy, in the silence of infrastructure, in the rules that are whispered but never printed. By subscribing to Winds of Thought, by hitting the like button on this video, you are not just supporting content. You are amplifying a signal. You are telling the algorithm that there's an audience for complexity, for discomfort, for narratives that don't have clean endings. You are voting for a corner of this platform where ambiguity is allowed to survive. And finally, live ambiguously. In a world demanding optimized, trackable, predictable versions of you, be deliberately, wonderfully human. Be inconsistently kind. Be illogically patient. Leave gaps in your own schedule where wonder or waste can take root. The systems that seek to finalize us feed on our predictability. Starve them with your beautiful, unreconcilable self. Thank you for listening. Thank you for holding this story. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to solve it. Just carry it with you. And the next time you feel the urge to be the hero, to say, I'll stay, remember the damn hollow station for and pause. That pause is the sound of a wall holding. That pause is the sound of you, remaining you. This has been a transmission from the gaps. For Winds of Thought, I am the narrator. Stay unpredictable.